Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Bad Occult Podcast, the podcast where we do, or at least talk about, inadvisable things in the name of magical science. I am, as always, Tyler Cadmian, aka Shadow, and with me...
This is Felix S. Warren, currently in my own body, complete with all the stuff that I was in here with when I was born.
Congratulations!
Something that happens every now and then.
So, this is part 2 of body occupations. So, there's some stuff that, we want to talk about after listening to the first episode a few times. And just, some stuff that I feel like either I got mixed up on, or we started to talk about and they got distracted, or I think one of the things we wanted to specifically talk about together, Felix and Tyler, is, how do you handle finding out that this is happening to you?
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, actually, there's a couple of levels of it. How do you handle that it's happening to you? How do you handle that it's happening to someone else?
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's been kind of a continuity of me finding out I've had somebody here. The first time I was really getting used to this idea, I've had other people in here, they've been in here sometimes, and they just sort of go here and they do things, and sometimes they just leave and they don't even mention anything about it, they just do that. I gained a cognizance of it, and then I straight up forgot.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle it yet, or I was encountering something else in my life that was making me just straight up forget this.
Yep.
And I was not able to keep the knowledge. They talk they're when it comes to discussion of identity, there's some discussion about how the mind can't grasp certain concepts about identity very easily, and so there were a couple of things about identity that I bumped into that I simply just flipped out about, and straight up had to forget that people were in here.
Yeah. It happens. I mean, I really feel had some discussion over the week about DID and otherkin versus multiple or plural.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of differences in the community, but I think we could all come together in the fact that thinking about your own identity in this multiple way is kind of brain breaking sometimes.
Yeah. Just coming to an understanding that your identity is different than what you were taught to believe.
Yes.
That what you were taught to believe is actually different than what is possible for you. I was taught to believe that one person, one body, your unique human soul was born with your unique perfect human body. They're supposed to be together. If something else comes in, then it's either an intrusion, some kind of demonic possession or some other sort of evil thing, or maybe you can be, maybe you can channel the spirit of a loved one or something for special occasions, for big important things. But it's not normal, and it's just not a thing. In fact, it's not possible for someone else to be in your body, do some things, and then leave, and then you just come back.
Right.
And that's what I thought.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very hard having a lived reality that is very different than what, your society or even peers believe in. You were raised Catholic. I was forcibly indoctrinated into conservative Christianity.
That is what we also call raised Catholic. It's not like I chose to be raised Catholic. I was forced to be raised Catholic.
So,
just cough out all the demons.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, a lot of the topics that we talk about, that are occult now, a lot of this stuff was things that were contrary to systems, but I've never seen something as widespread as this, like, anti-multiple sentiment.
Anti-multiple sentiment where?
Where, like, just in general, where people just can't believe that.
Oh, yeah.
This could be a lived experience.
I mean, it's interesting. We have a lot of anti-trans right now, and trans is actually a big part of the multiple experience.
Yeah.
Because you really can't guarantee what gender you're going to be, or what gender someone is going to be when they come into your body, and what gender the body is going to be that you end up in.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that it's like that, and then queer experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just don't know, like, a lot of things about, like, just the form that you're going to end up in.
Right.
And the lived experience, it's very interesting. I've thought a lot about, like, how do I manage this multiple identity? Like, Edward comes in a lot.
Yeah.
He's got his own blog. Venom has a blog. Mm-hmm. And like, that doesn't mean that they have a green card or something. But, like, I could make a corporation for Edward. I could make a corporation for Edward. He could have an LLC. Yeah. He could if I made the right kind of corporation for any of these people, they could be a legal entity in a number of ways. Mm-hmm. And in fact, like, you can have any number of legal entities based around one person.
Yes.
But there's still this idea that there's only, that one body has that one person, mm-hmm. and that one experience, and they're the only ones responsible for that experience, and that's the only place that they can ever be is that body.
Right. And, like, a lot of internalized belief about memory.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's been one of the hardest things to get past. I've had arguments, like, I even talked about it a little bit with Edward in the last podcast, where I'd have arguments with, like, someone about something, and then 30 minutes later, it's like, no memory of it, mm-hmm. And I've been in relationships where that was actually a gaslighting technique.
Yep. and Nos has had that as well.
Right. And so having all the trappings of the gaslighting technique, but it's so obvious that you're not trying to gaslight me. It's so hard to explain.
And I'd like to talk about the experience of having that.
Yeah.
So... before I was aware that multiple people were coming through this body during those time periods where, like, you and I would even just, like, you'd explain something to
mm-hmm.
me, and then I wouldn't understand it, like, later in the day.
Yeah.
Or, maybe it'd be explained several times, and I'd still, like, have trouble. Before I had cognizance that I was being different people, like, that this part of my memory was being switched over to this part of my memory was being switched over to this part of my memory, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that someone else was actually speaking besides me. Sometimes I'd be overlapping several at once.
Yes.
So what I would be kind of trying to draw from would be the experience of the body itself.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of floats across from one to the other, to the other, to the other. And what I didn't understand was that body experience is not complete.
Yeah.
That the body experience, like, if someone talked to my subconscious via hypnosis or some other means, mm-hmm. they could get pretty much everything that's been going on with the body at some point. The body and the subconscious together do have the record. Not everything is on the record, but they do have most of it. But to be able to access that record, you have to access the subconscious.
Right.
So, like, I would basically be trying to access the conscious body record and be like, okay, we talked about this, and there was this, and this, and I don't really know what you're talking about when it comes to what it is you're trying to explain.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, it would be so confusing to try to figure out what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what had happened was that someone had come into my body, experienced something, and then left. And when they left, they took the memories with them.
Yes.
Which sometimes they take the memories with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a conscious thing. That can be a non-conscious thing. Like, they just do that without deciding to. It can be, like, you know, part this way, part that way. But whenever they take the memories with them, if I didn't know they were here in the first place,
mm-hmm.
like, how would I figure it out?
Right.
And that's what we started doing.
Yeah.
We've started as a couple, like, talking. It's like, hey, that other person was in there again.
Yeah.
They're answering to Edward now.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that this is going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, and we started dialogue about it, and I start to, like, think, like, okay, this person that you're talking about, when have I experienced them up before? And,
yeah.
you know, how often have they been in my life? Has this been going on the whole time?
Right. Yeah. And, like, the thing is, and we've had this as sort of a personal motto throughout this whole thing, if what someone brings to the table makes things make more sense, then it's pretty likely to be true.
And it can be freaking outlandish.
Yeah.
We've been talking all this time, it's like, you know, episode number 18 now, about space aliens.
Yeah.
And, like, that's happening. Just, if you don't believe it's happening, that's fine. It's not really about that. It's just that, like, at some point, you just, I'd say, start to understand that this is how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that this is who you're dealing with. It's like whenever it comes to whoever's saying they're Therian or otherkin or what other
Mm-hmm.
type of identity, like, some of the identities I'm familiar with don't fit into those, by the way. I think, like, does otherkin fit aliens? Do aliens fit under otherkin?
That's been a long debate.
Because, like,
Therian is basically,
I know it's not Therian.
no. Otherkin, it's been a bit more of a debate. Like, even multiple, like, they're more accepting of fictives than alien injects, I've noticed.
Yeah, and so, but you know what? There's a word for it. Starseeds. Starseeds specifically, are supposed to be reincarnated from aliens.
Like they're from another, like, planet.
Like,
or
this, they are currently incarnated on Earth and
Right.
previously had an incarnation from a different planet. Is
Right.
what starseeds are supposed to be. But yeah, like, what if you're just talking to an alien telepathically who's just, like, somewhere?
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing, and sometimes they come over here. And sometimes they're, like, sometimes they're not aliens, sometimes they are time travelers, sometimes they're just some guy. Like, there's a lot of different possibilities out there for who could really show up.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is about what it is you're down for. I know you and Ed were going to talk about, like, a lot of specific things.
Yeah.
When it comes to how to handle this, like how to lock down the body, for instance. But, like, first of all, I think it takes noticing that your body is open.
Yeah.
I started to understand, and it was scary to understand this, by the way. Some people just stop before they get to this point and just...
Because it is kind
and
of
just
terrifying.
don't find out. They just keep letting it happen, but don't find out.
Yeah.
When you find out that other people have been in your body without your knowledge all this time and could have been doing anything at any time and known anything that you've ever thought or been doing at any point in your life ever.
It's terrifying.
It's a lot to take in.
Like, we're not going to sugarcoat it. Like, this...
It's existential.
it's a almost a primal. It invokes almost a primal fear.
I think it's like an ego death or something.
I'm not sure, because I mean,
because I can
honestly, I had this part of the thing that we're talking about lately is the fact that I had some of these realizations in the middle of methane.
Oh yeah, a lot of us did.
And I, Tyler, in this body, had this realization that was happening, and I kind of went crazy because of it. So, it's not going to kill you, if you realize something like this, but it's going to feel like it.
Yeah, so you were exposed to a highly hallucinogenic gas.
Right, which made
it's something you need to really specify when you talk about that.
It makes it a lot worse.
Well, I'm not sure if it made it worse. It may have actually helped.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you would have taken that the same way straight.
I don't know.
The methane kind of gave you a way to break.
Mm-hmm.
But, a lot of things happened while that was around. I'd like to talk about the actual, reality that we're experiencing now.
Yeah.
And, what I experience now, this is my existence. I no longer can be assured that I will have a thought in my head that is my own that no one will ever examine.
Yep.
Because you mostly out there, most of the people out there who are listening to this podcast assume that that's the case, that the inside of your head is totally private.
And it's not.
It never has been.
Never.
It never has been. There are people who can read your mind.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe in any sort of deities, then of course they're going to be able to read the inside of you, right?
Yeah.
So if anybody can possess you at any time, they can also they can have those thoughts at that time. Do they take them with them whenever they leave? Sometimes.
Sometimes you have to clean out your own head.
Yeah.
Honestly, part of the way that we have gotten to such a stable way of handling this is by doing things like the grounding that Mantis has taught. Part of our technique also includes sort of a sweep of the short-term memory and just sort of resetting that. But that takes time to learn, and it's something that you kind of have to hope that everyone does,
Yeah.
Circle of trust.
Well, and then just getting back to the I'm never going to have a private thought again.
Yeah.
I am never going to have a private thought again, and I may never have had in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And this assumption that the inside of you is always going to be completely private, impermeable, there will never be another person inside you, aside from sort of some religious caveats,
right?
That fill that purpose, that truth, I guess, that people hold, that can be broken.
Yep.
It can be made into a falsehood. And when you get to something like that, a long-held assumption that's made into a falsehood, you have to be able to survive it. You have to be able to survive it mentally.
Worldview change.
It is
it can break you.
Yeah. And so, you have to be able to get past that part. And I guess I want to talk about, how to get there, because we have done a lot of this.
Yeah.
And what has helped whenever we've had big worldview changes?
Yeah. I mean, understanding that the feelings of unreality are to be expected.
Yeah, they will come.
You will feel unmoored from reality. I think a lot of times when people have big worldview changes, even if it's something as simple as the Mandela effect, when people start encountering those kind of things, for some people it's a big worldview shift that wait, we may have alternate realities, those kind of things. Understanding that no matter what higher concepts you're trying to struggle with, your body still needs food. Just if you're feeling unmoored from reality, going back to basic self-care is very helpful.
So I can talk about this. I had an
Yeah.
experience like this very recently.
Yeah.
And I was having physical sensations of like vertigo. Not being able to, like, I would feel awful, but I couldn't lay down because my body couldn't stay horizontal. I had to go in the shower and just sort of stand there. I actually talked with my therapist about this, and he gave me some suggestions on going through this. And like, so one is breathing. Focusing on breathing, in and out, however best you can, and just focusing on the fact that you can breathe. Because like a lot of what I was doing was getting lost in my head in these thoughts of like all these identity things, and feeling like I was just going to get lost in all of it, like I was going to get crushed by all of these concepts, and just focusing on breathing. The fact that you can breathe in and out, that's not a reality changing concept. That's going to stay the same. Focusing on the breathing, and then sensations of the body. And that really helps get to the point where you can eat, because I was at that point where it's like I wasn't going to I was not in danger of not eating enough. But like it would have been nice to get to the point where I was like eating and drinking a bit more and getting to that body regulation phase. And the breathing exercises, the paying attention to the body sensations. Like I took a shower and that helped me with that.
And I mean,
that got me there.
I'm glad that you bring up your therapist.
Yes.
Like, we do the basic mental and physical health things. You know, it's not like we're ignoring our mental health for this kind of stuff. And I feel like that's important as well. Is like, even though these kind of like occult or esoteric topics are things that like you probably can't bring up or don't feel comfortable bringing up to like your doctor or your therapist, but you can explain the symptoms that you're having and they'd be able to help you with that. Like, you don't have to explain where it came from. Just explain what's going on.
I could tell you a little bit about how I've talked to mine. Basically, there's been quite a few times in the last few months where I haven't been in my body for the longest duration of time. Yeah. Like, basically some other person has been up in my body instead. And so when I go to therapy, They are my therapy appointments, and I am the one who always attends them. It's possible that before I was really understanding of my identity stuff and I was going to therapy before that someone else had shown up on therapy a couple of times, but it's very important that I am the one who's established the relationship with my therapist. Yeah. And he recognizes me. Yes. Won't gonna get too much into the weeds there, but there are professionals out there who are psychically attuned and aware and can recognize your shit. So, like, I talked to him about what's been going on in my body. Yeah. In my brain. And sometimes I wasn't the person who went and did that errand. I wasn't the person who had that conversation. I wasn't the person who read that news article or had that particular experience, but I talk about it. Yeah. My body went through it and my subconscious went through it. Right. I don't really talk about having other identities to my therapist too much. If it were something that I wanted to talk to him about that I thought I needed his actual help with, I would talk with him about it. Yeah. But right now, that's not what I actually go to therapy for with him. That's the thing, is that you can have all kinds of things that are going on with your life, but that may not be what you're actually being seen for. Yeah. Just like, do you really need to talk to your hairdresser about the situation? or can you tell them the cute story that, like, Venom actually experienced whenever he went out? Yeah. And, like, the answer is yes. You can just tell the cute story. It's okay. No one's keeping score. So, yeah, that's, like, relieved a lot, where it's, like,
I'm the type of person who wants people to get credit where credit's due.
Yes.
But this is not a reality in which we can do that.
We can only really do it a little bit. I love that, like, certain people are able to have their blogs. I love that we're recording. We've made a lot of notes on who's been doing which art and which script work on Peacock Planet. And other creative works. But it is really hard to give them any kind of credit because the way that identity is stored on this planet is a completely different thing.
Yeah. So, that's definitely some things that we've had to, like, talk about and come to an agreement with. And, like, I mean, it's something where it's, like, it is the most poly of poly things. Like, communication is so important. And, like, one of the things we're going to be talking about as well is relationships, because, the people that we channel are all people, and some of them are coming from the same locations. There's interpersonal relationships that go on, and how we navigate that is definitely important, too.
Yeah. I mean, like, we've talked about some of the interpersonal stuff on here. And, like, I think it's really good to talk about that, to give people an example of, like, how you work things out.
Yeah.
How people actually function together as psychics and as individuals.
Yeah.
So I wanna give Edward some time up to talk about his big subject.
We have so much that we could talk about on this topic, and sometimes I wish that we have more than just the two of us, because
I know it would be lovely to have a round table. If you've got a free body you could just walk over here with.
Yeah.
We can arrange something. Call us at badoccultadvice@gmail.com.
Call us specifically from a payphone.
All right, I'm gonna get Edward over here. You should get his stuff going.
All right, thank you so much, Felix. It's always fun to talk to you about this stuff. I mean, yeah, we've been doing this as a couple for a while, but, like, every time that Felix and I talk about these kind of things, there's always interesting stuff to discuss and discover. And so yeah. Anyways, Edward is getting ready. You can hear him saying 0 in the background. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up his new portrait. We weren't gonna let you keep the gas mask on forever.
Yeah, I was gonna redraw it myself, but Venom went and did this for me.
Yes, he did. How very nice of him.
I'm thrilled. So I did want to explain what happened there.
Yeah.
The first one was a bit of an interim. I couldn't quite figure out what to do that day, and I was like, okay, this'll work.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you only had like an hour before the podcast, like.
Yeah, it was a little bit hectic.
Yeah.
And I got really shy all of a sudden on what do I do with my identity. Mm-hmm. And Venom kind of has the same thing going. He's got the hat and glasses.
I love the visor and like the puffy jacket. It looks like it's like quilted.
Yeah, it is. It's like that's Mageville wear, so everything's kind of different over there. But that one, like, that is actual clothing. It's not like an illusion or something projected. That's because I get cold very easily, and so that's my snuggly jacket.
So what's going on with the visor?
I have a lot of stuff that I'm doing. I have a lot of projects. That actually helps me keep track of a lot of the, like, I hate to humble brag, but we're in space and we have a lot of technology, so... Oh,
you're in space now. That's right. You're on the ship now.
I'm on the ship now.
Congratulations.
I finally got abducted by aliens.
This was on your bucket list.
It feels so good. So, I have access to their technology now, and it's like technology that can sync up with a lot of psychic stuff. So I've got a visualization for stuff like different people I'm connected to telepathically across space.
Nice.
And there's quite a lot. A lot of you probably end up like this. I think I think a lot more people end up like this than really is talked about. Just seeing how much is on social media, people are having behavior that I recognize as being very, very, very suspect. It's being similar to what's going on with us. You can have a lot of connections to a lot of different people out there telepathically. You might just be getting little updates on their lives. And that's usually how it starts out, is you just get their little postcards.
From your blurbos.
Yeah, from your blurbos. From your little cinnamon rolls. Maybe you write a fanfic or something. Maybe just on the drive to work, there's an elf. On the drive to work, there's an elf. And that's your elf. That's your elf.
What?
You know what? I bet Tolkien had an elf.
On your drive to work.
On your drive to work, you get updates on the elf.
Oh my god.
I didn't have that happen with myself, but I have heard of someone with that. And sometimes it can happen with such regularity like that. But sometimes it can be completely random. You just have like a very transcendent experience where someone just out of nowhere is like, help! Or, oh my gosh, this is amazing, or whatever, and you just kind of share in their experience. And then after that, maybe you don't connect ever again, but maybe you do. It really just depends.
Interesting. So, yeah. Felix sort of mentioned this a little bit, but I'd like to sort of highlight it a bit more. Part of the reality of this kind of situation and the level of trust that we've developed with the set of beings that we interact with regularly, there's times where Felix and I are not up for like days.
I was basically driving this body for most of the month of November.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about it too much while it was happening.
No.
For security purposes, I guess. I don't know.
I mean...
Would anybody really have cared?
So, if you go back to the November stuff, let's see. I think there was one episode where Felix was not there at all. And someone was pretending to be him.
We didn't have that fully happen, but it happened a little bit.
Yep.
That's the Isekai episode. We basically, he was there for some of it.
Yeah.
But logistically, he couldn't be there for all of it.
Yeah.
And, maybe if you're clever, you can catch where it happened.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so, I was driving this body for most of that month. Venom was here quite a lot. He was doing a lot of the grocery hauls. Kind of a cross-town walk. And, I remember Umber was coming a lot to do a lot of, logistical and moving around stuff in the house. Mantis was coming up a lot to do a lot of, logistical stuff. He would, Dude, Mantis was doing the cat box all the time.
Yeah.
I want to give him credit for that. This is not glorious work.
No.
But at some point, a bunch of us basically realized, hey, they need help down here doing, regular stuff. And, are we really doing anything so important that we can't come help for a couple hours?
Yeah.
Also, it's Earth. Just so you know, there's no other planet quite like Earth. That's my opinion, at least. And it's nice to have a couple hours down here, especially in a state with legal weed.
Yeah.
If there's some good snacks, I can listen to Earth music, and the American internet is there. It's paradise.
America.
And that's also why you need to be careful, because there's plenty of beings who want to jump into your earthling bodies.
So protection is important.
Yes.
Part of the reason why we're able to have Edward up here so freely is because I thoroughly vetted him.
Yes.
I I'm not even going to be humble about it. I'm very accomplished when it comes to handling any sort of like spiritual entities that may or may not have dubious intentions.
Could you talk a bit about that experience? Because I don't remember it very well due to this body's still processing a little bit of that.
So like
I might remember it a bit more as you talk about it.
Basically I know how to summon, banish, bind entities, in unfortunately due to very practical experiences, and make sure that it sticks, because there's a lot of times where if you're dealing with an entity that is, for whatever reason, it has a reputation of being like a trickster or slippery or something like that, where it's like it's very hard to get them to make basically commands to stay away stick.
Right. If they're being nasty.
If they're being nasty, I know how to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And I know how to make sure to kick them out the door so they don't come back. So, like, it's not like we've been cavalier about this.
So, talk about the experience with me, please.
I don't know which experience to talk about.
Any. You said that you basically had to sort of sniff me out.
Yeah.
So how did that go?
I mean, so there are several different ways of doing it, especially when it's an entity that you realize has been in someone else for a long time. You cross-check memories. Basically, you know, if I realize that someone else had been in Felix that I may later peg as you, I see how much Felix remembers of the situation. I also, like, write down notes or keep track of stuff in my head where it's like, okay, whenever Felix doesn't remember this span of time and it's this kind of topic, it usually seems to be someone with these kind of traits. Mm-hmm. Felix's hair is very curly, but there are certain defined curls that show up differently depending on who's in Felix's body.
Yep.
And you have a very specific curl pattern that I recognize because I've been tracking this for years.
Yeah, you've been seeing this the whole time.
So this isn't something where it's like, you know, I summon you into a demonic, like...
into a petri dish.
I was going to say, like, more, you know...
Sorry.
Solomonic, demonic seal thing, but yes. Basically summon you into an entity petri dish. I like that.
We often call it an experiment.
And, you know, interrogate you while looking at you from under a microscope. Some of this has been micro stuff for years.
Yeah.
Just, if you don't trust someone or something, trust your gut. Like, keep track of things. Be aware. Oh my God. Don't trust cars.
Keep track of things.
Keep track of things, you know. If something seems off, then it probably isn't gonna be hunky-dory the next time this person shows up. So yeah, we never really had to have, like, you know, a come to Jesus or like a whatever, like, stern talking to me and you.
But you sniffed me out over time.
Yes. And if I did not feel like that you were good for Felix's mental, physical well-being, we would have quite conversation.
So there was basically a period where people were showing up in Felix kind of gradually in this manner, as opposed to announcing themselves.
Yeah.
Because they weren't really aware of the fact that they were walking around in Felix's body. That, like, for instance,
now
we had a couple of people who thought that they were dreaming or something.
Yes.
And they didn't know that they were an actual person in an actual life.
Now, there's a difference between that and someone trying to fake that.
trying to fake that.
Trying to fake not knowing that they're entering.
Oh, yeah, just pretending.
Because we did have, during that time period as well, people who were genuinely not aware, and then people who were totally aware but trying to fake it.
Yeah, trying to be a sneak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what I was going to say is that, like, you had this period where people were kind of, like, there. But then you started to have a period where people were announcing themselves.
Yes.
Because in this body, there started to be a cognizance, like, oh, I can have another person show up. Yeah. And another person might start realizing that they're here and actually own that and introduce themselves.
Well, that, and we started, like, posting, what you called Post-it notes in the last episode, where it's like, hey, if you're new here, announce yourself, Yeah,
like that became an established norm. The brain could get there. Yeah. And also there've been some accepted norms about, like, say, if someone hasn't announced themselves even though they've been here a while, how to enter the forgiveness of the group. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd say that, like, if you've... This is an interesting thing to say, actually. If you've been in a body for a while and haven't announced yourself and you're scared, like, lead with that. Mm-hmm. Just lead with, like, hey, I'm scared to talk about this, but I've been in here a while, and I want to figure out how we can... How do we make this work? Mm-hmm. And what is it that you want to know about me?
Yeah.
Like, what is it that you want to know about what's been going on? Sorry, this has just been real weird for me too.
Yeah.
Like, just start somewhere and start from a place of openness, honesty, and wanting to offer more information.
Yeah. And, like, I mean, we're talking from a very... strange, I don't know quite how to say it, a very unique perspective, in that we're both occultists. Like, Felix and I are both occultists who are exploring this together as a couple, and we're married.
I am lucky to land in a body who is married to you, who is in your body right now. The two bodies that married each other while the souls were in each other.
Yeah.
So, I'm very lucky to be like, hey, Tyler, now that I'm in Felix's body, the man that you married who is not me, can we talk about all this occult stuff that I know that this brain and body knows and that I also am familiar with and I know you are familiar with?
Yeah.
And... yeah, we're lucky to be able to have this conversation because you've got two different occultists who've been able to do this kind of body switching.
Yeah. We were doing this independently of each other.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's been, both of us would say, like, doing this since I was a kid, like...
I've been doing it since I've been at least 16.
Yeah. And, like, Edward has a similar experience where, like... part of the reason for the interest in this kind of relationship is because, like, it is a grand experiment. And in some ways, like, these bodies are the petri dishes, because there's really no other way to, like, really find this kind of stuff out, is except to, like, do it and then record it. So, and then one thing to say, I'm glad that you mentioned, like,
the relationship
stuff, because, like, weddings, marriages, like, relationship, those kind of things, it gets a lot more complicated when you understand that souls can come in and out of bodies. Yep. Like, I, Tyler, am married to Felix. I am not currently in a relationship with Edward, who I'm talking to in my husband's body.
Yeah. And so I'm not wearing the wedding band that Felix and Tyler share.
Yeah.
I am wearing a wedding band for someone who I am married to.
Yes.
Who is not here in this room right now. But that is part of what I wear to be present.
Yeah.
Your relationships are soul to soul. Mm-hmm. So if you want to wear something that is for your relationship, that has to come in and out with the soul.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're trying to force a relationship on an identity that isn't part of it. There have been a few times, I'm not sure who was actually up at the time that it happened, but the body remembers that Nos, and if you weren't here last episode, Nos is like us, basically. Whoever, like this body and whoever was in it at the time, is in it at the time. And then Vos is,
the other person.
Body. And we don't have set vocabulary for the rest yet, but watch this space. Nos has oh man, I started losing it because this is an unattributed one. You gotta watch that. It squirmed away. We still have a lot to deal with when it comes to memory and thought stuff because we've had a few people who've had to be in a brain and not get caught.
Yeah.
We've had people who literally have felt that they were in danger and did not want to get caught. And so there's still all kinds of sneaky little things around, and also just brain...
unexpected memory holes.
Yep, unexpected memory holes. So, I did want to talk about, we're like relationship to relationship, like soul to soul.
And that you're wearing a wedding band that signifies your relationship to the person you're married to.
Yeah, right now. That is part of how I kind of submit myself where it is that I am, at least what I try to do if I can. That's what I'm doing over here whenever I'm in like this series of bodies. I'm not sure. This club?
Exclusive.
Very exclusive club. And if you had another person here who had larger hands, then you have to get like another set of rings or something.
Yeah.
So like it's this is something that like one person has their own stuff, but like if they have another body they go to, they'll probably have stuff just for that body. Just like clothing varies per body. You would have different outfits on different bodies because of the needs there. Sorry.
It's okay.
I had to move around for a second because my back was sort of getting
So
shifty.
You were talking about something about earlier and then you kind of lost it. So
I did.
I think, like you mentioned, memory issues are still a thing. Like, that's actually a very quick way to find out.
This is my own brain.
Not just that, but it's a quick way to find out someone that is not currently present was the main recorder of that memory. You can't access it.
It's very difficult to get back to. It's unattributed and we're not really sure. Oh, I remember it now. It took a while to roll back that beautiful bean footage. Someone was mentioning that it was auspicious that it was a certain time in Gnosis body. Like, saying that it was 11/11 or 2/22 or something like that. Something that's kind of special in our household.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure who it was that was actually up in this body at the time. But whoever was in Vos very sternly replied that didn't mean anything to the person who was in Nos. And so whoever was in Nos at the time was basically remarking that it was like, oh yeah, it's 2/22, but like expecting a response from the other person even though they had no relationship to each other.
Right.
Because we usually do kind of an endearment.
Like, okay, so
11 or something like that.
11/11.
Yeah.
Has been a special time between me, Tyler, and Felix, where we actually share a kiss. It started out as a joke before New Year's because we were going to be spending New Year's with friends, and then we noticed it was 11/11, so we just New Year's kiss early. And so just 11/11 has always been one of the times where we either like blow a kiss if we're too far away from each other, or if we can, sort of race the clock, see if we can get a kiss in before it turns to 11/12. But the thing is like, understanding that was something between me and Felix, not between my body and Felix's body. And like, I was the person who was in Nose at the time, and I had gotten upset because, like, the person was just an acquaintance. Like, they were actually someone who I don't think we interact with much anymore. Partially because of this, they did not understand the fact that 11/11 was special because it's like an intimate, like, relationship, romantic moment between Felix and I. And that's not something that I just share with anybody.
Yeah.
That's like having a casual friend hear that story, and then anytime it's 11/11, it's like, oh, it's 11/11. And it's like, that's weird.
I actually am fairly sure that is a person you later banished.
I was pretty sure.
So yeah, their feeling on the time was simply that, like, oh, isn't it curious and interesting that it's that repeating number that everyone keeps noticing in here.
And not even caring to understand why. That was the part that made me the most mad. Was the, like, oh, yes, isn't it interesting? It's 11/11. And I'm like, you don't even have the basic decency to check in with that body enough to understand that it's a romantic moment. Like, yeah. No.
I would call it bad espionage in a way.
It was like it's like, you know, when you have those games where it's like someone so-and-so will remember this choice. It's like, that was a failed check.
So, like, if you have this situation where you're in someone else's body and maybe you pick up on, like, there's something like this, just kind of, like, try to be aware of like, are you trying to blend in as someone's girlfriend? Because that might be a mistake.
Right. It's better to ask, especially if it seems like an inside joke or something. Like, ask for the origin. If no one can tell you the origin, that's information as well.
Now, here's the thing. Does the other person know that you're not from here?
Right.
Does the other person know that you are the body snatcher?
Right.
And I wanna talk about this. Whenever you end up in a body with someone who's in a relationship. And the other person don't know.
Yeah, it is so hard. Because, like, you don't... It's almost as bad as, like, outing someone as gay. Or, like, outing someone because, like, without their permission or knowledge. But you kind of have to because you're in that body.
Like, it is very much like an espionage thing. Like, do I give up my secret identity?
Mm-hmm.
Do I give up my secret identity? Because once I do that, everything is out. Like, once someone is outed as a spy, they can never be unespionaged again. Like,
and it's
you can never get back your secret identity.
And the thing is like, this is so misunderstood. Like, in general, like, having multiple, like...
No one ever expects that their spouse is going to be a person in addition to the other people.
Other person in the relationship, like, whether it be, like, long-term committed relationship or, like, boyfriend-girlfriend, close friends, like, platonic roommates for years. But one of the things to know is that if it's someone who actually cares about you, platonically, romantically, whatever, they would have already noticed.
Yeah, like, one of the things is they may notice you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, you pegged me.
I did.
I got pegged. And I did not expect to get pegged because I was pretty good at espionage at this point. Although, hot damn, methane makes everybody bad at espionage. Oh, you, like, say things out loud that you don't think you're saying out loud.
Superpower. Everyone was admitting things left and right, but that included me.
It was so hard, but I'm so glad that kind of started some conversations.
It did.
So, yeah, they may notice you. If they notice you, own up, ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
First thing you should do, ask for help. Say, hey, I show up in your spouse or significant other, your loved one, your brother, whatever, and can you help me help your loved one person, because I would love to be better informed as to what is going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Also, sorry.
Also,
if this is the case, please feel free to go ahead and say, I have no idea what's going on. If you have some idea what's going on, please share that with them.
Yeah. There's no point in hiding stuff because you're already in a foreign body.
The first thing you should do is show helpfulness, because that shows that you're trying to work with them. There is going to be some suspicion and paranoia.
Yeah.
Actually, I do not want to speak ill of anyone who is not here, and I'm not going to speak ill, but I am going to speak of someone who is not here. Can we talk about Mantis and establishing levels of trust about Mantis?
Yes.
I don't think we've really gone here yet, and
No.
I guess it is a really big part of things, but it took a really long time for Felix to trust Mantis. Felix in specific. When did you start trusting Mantis? It had to be earlier than Felix.
Oh...
You and him go a long way back is the thing.
We do. Like, I established trust with him before Felix and I ever was in a relationship.
Yeah.
So it was less about establishing trust, especially when he was starting to show up in Bose's body, because there were certain tells. Like, I am psychic. I have a very specific psychic sense where there are specific songs that come up in my head. There's specific memories. There's specific shows, imagery, things like that become associated immediately with an entity that I am in contact with. Or with a person that I'm in contact with. It doesn't matter. Like, there are certain things that I know about someone as soon as I meet them, specifically because of what associatively pops up in my head.
Yep.
And that does not change unless it's an in-person person, but there's another soul in there. So
when Mantis showed up over here,
I was having the associations coming up that I had associated with Mantis when I was just speaking to him as an entity in my own head.
So what I would call that is Mantis's ID.
Yeah.
So, or for anyone, like, that's your ID for them. That's their ID in your head.
It can't be faked because it's totally not conscious.
It is a completely psychic,
Yeah.
psychological experience. It is an internal experience.
And it can't be faked because it's all made up of associations that no one would understand but me.
Yeah.
And it grows and it changes over time as I have a relationship with someone. Like, for example, Steven Universe actually became more associated with Felix later on in our relationship after we watched it together. Before that point, it definitely wasn't. But, like, you know, it'd be very strange for nowadays for someone to claim to be Felix and I don't have something related to Steven Universe in the back of my head while I'm talking to that person.
Yeah. You just don't get anything that you'd have the associations with, and they're just saying that they're Felix and trying to talk like Felix.
And so, like, I literally have, like, sort of like a lie detector when it comes to, like, people claiming they are who they say they are, that I don't even talk about or haven't even talked about much until this point, because, like, it just makes sense to me. It's sort of like how some people describe synesthesia, where they're like certain, like, words, like there's one that I follow. Anyways, that's getting way off track. We're
talking about establishing trust regarding Mantis.
So, yeah. Establishing trust regarding Mantis. I did not have nearly as hard of a time because I had that. And there were times where Felix was asking me why I could trust Mantis so much, and I tried to describe this, and it doesn't make sense. Like, I can't just say that because, like, I see this certain scene from this TV show in my head every time I talk to him, that, like, I know it's him, and that I can trust him.
Well,
it was very hard to talk about at the time because I didn't really understand it myself.
What we can say is that you knew him from a while back. And that's what the real thing was.
Yeah.
So, because you'd already established trust before with him, and you could keep sensing that trust was worthwhile, like that it was still there, you had a level of trust with Mantis already.
Mm-hmm.
Felix really did not.
Right.
He had a very interesting and I would say bad experience that was not Mantis's fault.
Right.
When it came to Mantis.
Yes.
So he had to work past a lot of trust issues when it came to letting Mantis into this whole thing.
Yeah.
Not just Mantis, but actually pretty much everyone. Felix had to reestablish trust with, I'd say, almost every entity in his life, every person in his life. He had that kind of thing happen.
Yeah.
And like with Mantis in particular, it's just like that's something where that was actively worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mantis has actually come into Felix's body and spent time with you.
Mm-hmm.
And Felix got there from a place before that was of total distrust.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how far someone can move on this topic.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we talked last episode about how, like, you know, if your spouse isn't willing to go somewhere, like Felix was certainly willing to accept like what was going on with you, Tyler, and yourself and your identity. But there was definitely a time where he was not willing to accept Mantis into like this house.
Yeah. No, there was a time where he literally told not just Mantis, but several other entities that he did not want to talk to them anymore. And that meant that, like, they basically could not show up in me unless I was, like, not in range of Felix.
Yeah. Yeah, they like, that is how strong that wish of Felix's became.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, like, be aware of just how much impact these wishes can have. If you have a communication block with, like, a certain person, a certain entity or whatever, like, maybe go back over this and see, is this like an issue you're having?
Right.
But also when it comes to security, like locking down, we had that asshole come through that was trying to like make a big deal about the numbers whenever he wasn't in a relationship with you.
Yeah.
And at some point, you summoned him into Felix and then you banished him.
Mm-hmm.
And in the way that you banished him meant that he wasn't going to come back in.
No.
He wasn't going to come back.
He wasn't.
And it's as simple as that.
Yep.
Like, you can make it simple. In fact, the more simple you make it, the better, because a lot of these people that show up in other bodies, like, they what they're going through is pretty complicated. Like, so you better make it simple. And making it simple is like, don't come back here.
Yeah.
I think if you really do want to allow for any further communication, you know, if you are the person who's doing the act, then, you know, you can easily specify, like, until I summon you back, you're banished.
Yeah.
But that's something where you're the one who gets to open the door. They don't get to knock.
Yeah.
It's just like, on the one hand, it's very secure. On the other hand, it's a severe action. It's like it's much more severe than a restraining order because it's like a force field almost.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and that's definitely a way to do security and like,
one of many.
One of many, but like. It has been a lot easier to do this kind of stuff because we have two bodies working together. You know, it's not like one person recording their observations and then, trying to nonchalantly get their friends to verify things without actually explaining what's going on because they can't.
Mm-hmm.
We're fully aware and obviously documenting a lot of this stuff. And it's communication and documentation are the most important things, because once you understand that memory is not as solid as you think it is, especially when it comes to the multiple entity identity things that go on, documentation is so helpful.
Yeah, memory, if you've been having memories outside of your own body, then it might take a while for them to transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Also, with telepathy being possible, and hypnosis being possible, you can have implanted memories that are not your own.
Right.
You can have false things show up. Being able to recognize those for what they are, and understand them means that you can filter them out at some point. I'm not saying it because it's a doomsday scenario. I'm saying it's because, like, hey, that happens.
Yeah.
It can just be a thing that you deal with and move on.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to kind of make sure that we got to locking down the body, especially at night when you're asleep.
Yes. Definitely one of the things that we discovered more the wedding rings was the first thing we figured out, was like there is a definite change when you are wearing a piece of jewelry all the time, day in, day out.
Yeah. So jewelry that you can wear anywhere, including in the shower or something like that, is very helpful. I think this is why people who are married are actually more secure in certain ways, is because they're just more locked down all the time because they're usually wearing the wedding band all the time.
Yeah.
And it's always the big tell if they're not. Like, Nose will take stuff off to be able to do the dishes and stuff like that, but otherwise it's like, it's pretty much always on. And so there's another thing that we wear in addition to the ring. And having 2 helps. Having 3 is even better. I would actually say 3 is a good minimum. And it's basically because if 1 breaks, you've got 2.
Yeah.
Whereas with, like, 2, if 1 breaks, you've got 1 left.
So examples can be charms on a necklace. It can be several rings on your hands, whether left or right. A pin that you always put onto a specific jacket. Those kind of things are trinkets, are what we call them.
Yeah.
They could be symbols, whatever. It could even be I'd say just like a certain shirt that only one person wears, but that gets a little bit more complicated when you get into the reality of, like, just day-to-day living.
I want to get to clothes after this.
Yeah.
So with the trinkets in particular, you want these to kind of blend. It's gonna have to look, so you're blending in with society, and society thinks that you're one person, one soul, one body. And so all of them have to think that's basically the case all the time. So if you change out, like, a little necklace or a ring, or like you wear different shoes for whatever reason, I don't know. I think the shoes is a little bit more awkward, but, like, just stuff that's easy to change out. Like, if you change out accessories, and they kind of fly under the radar, then that's not anything too notable. Maybe somebody who sees you all the time might notice, like, that, like, you always seem to be wearing that one while you're doing, like, your programming work, and just say it's lucky.
Yeah.
Like, let them come up with the explanation is usually the best thing to do.
Don't treat it as anything weird or different or like having to hide anything, and no one's gonna think that.
Yeah. Just like, be clandestine, but don't go out of your way about it. It's just it's about not acting like it's super notable. But it is a tell. It's a tell for you and the people who know that you are sometimes not you.
Yeah.
There's going to be people who are in an in-group and people who are not in that in-group. And, I mean, kind of same as anything else, really. Like, there's plenty of kind of secrets that people keep for their own safety. I mean, like, if you're in a society where you're not allowed to, like, be out as gay, then there's going to be people who know that you're gay, and there's going to be ways that you have tells to each other that, like, the straights don't know. And that's kind of like what this is. It's just a much more secret club.
Much, much secret. So, you wanted to talk about clothes specifically.
Yeah, so clothes have a different thing going on with psychics. If you can do body projection, like out of body projection into another body, or if you just like want to go find someone. So clothes tend to keep the vibe of the person who was wearing them before, and that you have to be pretty alert when it comes to clothes and security. If the only people who ever come into your body and out of your body in your rotation are all pretty secure, and you don't care that one of them could like basically know where you are at all times because you're wearing the same outfit as they were earlier, or be able to like read your mind more easily, or be able to suddenly project into your body, or make sensations happen like on your skin or something. Like, if you basically know that they're not going to do that, or the only reason that they would ever do that is because they think that, like, you think that would be really funny or something. Like, then that's okay.
I have a story about that.
But if you don't trust the person who came into your body, you need to change clothes.
Yes.
Just change clothes, and then you don't need to worry about it. Clothes carry a lot of psychic influence. Now, if like several people have been through one outfit in a day, then I would say it would be hard for somebody who was like five switches back to really like reach through. But it's still possible.
Yep, definitely.
Some people, that's their specialty. You have to be careful about that with psychic ability, is that there's always someone who this is the one thing they do. That's their JoJo stand.
Oh my god, JoJo stand. That's so appropriate.
It's a good way to think about it sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, like, people think that, like, psychic can be divided up into, like, telekinesis, telepathy, things like that. There's, like, sometimes very, like, unique, niche kind of edge
personal
cases.
Abilities.
Yeah. Personal abilities that, like, you can't neatly define, but, like, are very interesting.
Yeah. Like, there's categorizations for them, but, like, this will be another cool episode at some point,
definitely.
I'm sure.
Oh my god, categorization.
So, yeah, like, you can, like, for instance, use the clothes to project telekinesis. You were saying there was a funny story that you had.
Oh, I had borrowed one of Felix's, like, sweatshirts, because all of mine were in the wash, and he was able to influence, like, me telekinetically, like, to accidentally bump into things.
Oh, that's right.
So that is another thing. Like, he was doing it just as a joke, and I'm like, I am kind of clumsy, but I'm clumsy in specific ways, and this was, like, totally different. It was like, I had an empty cup or something, and I was, like, aiming for the table, and all of a sudden I just, like, fling it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is not me.
Very, very silly stuff with no consequences.
Yes.
While he's learning his telekinesis.
Yes. So, yeah, that's another thing. If you're, like, borrowing someone else's clothes, be aware that, like, you know.
Oh, so that's why he was doing it. He was taking the opportunity because you had the sweatshirt.
Yes.
Okay, that was I was wondering at the time why exactly he was doing that of all things at that time.
But yeah, that's what was going on.
Ah, okay. So that was the actual thing he was testing out.
So yeah, like, that's a lot of the stuff that you have to think of whenever you start dealing with these kind of, like, body swapping, like, long-term body occupation. Like, someone might be able to telekinetically make you fling things around if you accidentally put their clothes on.
You know, that's the kind of thing that would have made Felix really distrust someone like Mantis, you know, early on. Because that's the kind of stuff that Mantis was, like, showing that he could do. And it's very interesting that now Felix is the one learning how to do it. Probably from Mantis.
Yes, from Mantis.
And I think that shows the kind of progression that you can have with these sort of scenarios.
We've gone full circle.
I really like that. I like to see
This is a Hallmark story.
I don't know how
Enemies
much
to friends.
how aware the listeners have been that there have actually been tensions between these people before, and sometimes they're just there.
Yeah.
But like that's been part of the work of the podcast, and part of the interesting experiment of the podcast is like, hey, how do we get us to talk about these things together?
Right.
Because we want to.
And I mean, this stuff is not stuff that most people would be able to talk about. Like,
Yeah.
how do we talk about interpersonal relationships when there's only two physical bodies in the room?
Yeah.
Like,
so I feel like I want to come back for the aftercast, and I know the aftercast is a thing now. Because in the aftercast, we're gonna have a little bit more of a mix of guests, I think, and maybe you will get that answered.
Right. So yeah, spoilers.
Shit, that's right. There's gonna be an aftercast. I've been talking all this shit about Mantis. You can come up and talk about it.
So we're gonna have the inaugural Bad Occult aftercast because there's been a lot of times where people just want to like shoot the shit about like what we just talked about or have opinions or interjections, but we can't have that happen during the podcast. So, and that also includes the studio audience who may actually catch up with Twitch, because there's times where we've getting a little bit meta. There's been times where there's been chats before, and I basically have not mentioned them because we're doing a podcast episode. You know?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do anything with that.
So
we'll be on Twitch.
Yeah.
For that, you can stick around Twitch, and we'll be here. And then we haven't really talked about how this will be posted.
We'll figure that out later.
Okay.
So, anyways, that is not even what you have to figure out because you're Edward.
I know I am, but like one of the things that I've been doing,
I
did actually a lot of podcast work for the whole month of November.
You did so much work. Like, there's been a lot of behind the scenes that's like, I did your portrait. You did mine. Yes, you did. You did my picture frame portrait. Yes. And, that's the thing is like, surprise, some of the people who have been working behind the scenes are like people like Edward.
I make the sausage too.
Yeah. And I mean, we mentioned Venom did your portrait.
Yeah.
So, like, Felix is not doing everyone's portraits. Different people in Felix's body are doing those portraits. Surprise!
Yeah, at some point we'll have a discussion about that because it's been very interesting seeing the different ways that people have been doing the art.
And I mean, like, we've been trying to brainstorm some ways to have like more recorded reactions. How we're going to release them, we're going to figure it out later.
Oh, pro tip to people who are occupying other bodies before I slide out. I wanted to mention about like using the skills of a body while you're in it. If you are occupying an artistic body and maybe you're an artist, you will probably notice that your style is different. Mm-hmm. When you do work, your style will be different. If you try to finish their work, it will not be entirely in their style. Mm-hmm. And just go with it. Like, a lot of times they won't notice.
Yeah.
If you show up regularly, they'll kind of notice there's a style shift that's happening. They won't really know why.
Yeah.
They'll blame it on the music you listen to or something like that.
Felix had been trying to figure out this for years and years and years.
Oh my gosh, my style has a definite, distinctive thing going on with it that is not in his, and he was trying to figure out how to make it turn on and off on purpose.
Yes.
And it was like, oh, well, you got to get me over there on purpose, and that we've got to figure out that I'm
over
Felix
there. On and off again.
Yeah, we've got to figure out that I'm over there in the first place to be able to do the art on purpose.
So, yeah. I mean, this kind of stuff would be fun to talk about in the after party. So,
yeah.
Aftercast.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Check me out on paraparapsychology.tumblr.com.
Yeah.
That is my actual personal blog.
Parapsychology.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you so much again for showing up.
Thanks for having me over. I'm going to slide on out.
Yes, bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao. That's a type of dog.
It is.
Oh man, it's always fun to like talk with Edward. Like, I'm really glad that we finally got him on the podcast because I've been talking to him for like so long and finally actually able to. But Felix getting settled in.
0.
There we go. He's getting resettled. We had quite the conversation. Waiting for him to get settled back in.
Hey-o.
Hey-o.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
I was actually with Mantis, so that's kind of funny.
Full circle redemption story.
Podcast listening party.
So yeah, welcome back. We've had quite the meandering conversation.
Yeah, I feel like this was a really good one.
Yeah.
Like, I know it meandered a lot, but, like, really, really interesting topics. I want to listen. The hardest part is that I really can't listen back through it the same night. I have to wait until at least the next day to listen to it, or my brain does weird things. Yeah,
and that's another thing about dealing with this kind of stuff is like with the memory understanding that we have now, like it's just you spend 2 days unfucking your mind if you listen to the podcast the same day as we record it.
Yeah. It's just kind of a time warp if you listen to it right afterward. I think a lot of people prefer to like not edit their work until a little bit later, and I think this is why it's a little weird to listen to yourself right after you said something. Yeah. Because it's already in your kind of like recent memory, so to have it in your recent memory again, it's just it's a little weird. Yeah.
So, speaking of recent memory, you guys have been able to accomplish something finally. The RSS feed.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, the whole podcast is now on RSS. It's on Spotify. It's on, I guess it's on Apple too. I haven't been checking whether it's on Apple. I have to go look. But I don't remember if I have to do something specific to get it on Apple. But it's all on Spotify. All the way up to the previous episode. Hooray. And then the next episode will be up within a couple of days on RSS and on YouTube.
That was a joint effort. Like, yeah. That's one of the really fun things is like once you start getting this stuff figured out.
It's so hard for me to do something if it's very repetitive. So I can do like the first maybe even 10. But like I got up to 8 episodes on the RSS, I think.
Yeah, once you finally figured it out.
Once I finally figured out what the sequence of events was necessary to do it, like I got up to 8, and it's like I couldn't really do any more. And after that, it's really hard for me to do any after that. And so I think it was Venom
did a lot of them. I think Edward stepped in and did a couple.
Yeah. And like, yeah, everybody just like came in and put a couple on the queue until they were all done. Yeah. And I really appreciate it because like when excuse me, when someone else comes in here, like they feel like doing different things than I do, and they also like if I don't feel like doing certain things. If they come in, they may feel like doing those things. Sometimes, you know, actually the conversation is like, you know, hey guys, I really don't feel like doing the dishes, but they need to be done, and I don't really have a reason to be down here. Does anybody want to do the dishes and listen to some YouTube long play videos or something? Like, yeah.
We sort of put it up on like a quest board, and someone usually volunteers.
I will say that the people who come do this, they're on the body's short list of people that the body likes to be down here. And sometimes there does have to be a negotiation about who is here at a certain time. Like, If someone's emotional spectrum doesn't match what's going on with my body, then we have to schedule for when it will.
Yeah.
Or it'll be like, hey, I'm not quite right there yet. Can you dial in about 3 hours after I've like calmed down a little bit?
Yep.
Do you want to be here for whenever we have a walk in the woods? Because I bet that would be a great time for you to be here.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Stuff like that is very important. And also realizing that your body has a say.
Yeah.
Your body has its own vote.
And it's got good ideas. Like, it actually, your body probably has an idea about it. So it's kind of like you ask your subconscious, and your subconscious speaks for your body. Is kind of, I think, the best way to think about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just as simple as drawing some tarot cards. If you don't know how to really, like, inwardly ask your body directly, if you don't know how to communicate directly with your body, or your body still hasn't quite gotten there from its own end, just start with some sort of system of divination, and go from there. And your body's vote is a very intelligent vote. And often the body has some really good ideas about how to go forward.
Yeah.
It's not just a veto.
Definitely. Yeah, that's always been an interesting thing, and like learning how to hear that is its own thing and takes time, but like once you start getting to that place, it's definitely makes things a lot easier. It's better than like someone coming in and then having just a horrible time because your body actually doesn't want anyone else in there because it's tired.
My body has voted for certain people to be in here before, like has actually requested like, hey, it's been a while since I've had so-and-so in here and I need a break. Can you just get them in here?
Yeah.
So I can have a break? Thanks.
Yeah.
And like, be aware of that. That like sometimes you've got to put on a rotation for the body's sake, and the body is the body is usually trying to help everyone.
Yes.
So if you have someone who is not on the body's short list, there's probably a reason.
Yeah.
And if it's a reason that can be worked out, then work that out. But like the body has that primary say for a reason,
yeah,
and probably has a good idea as to why now is not the time.
Yeah.
Talk with the body about why.
Communication. It's so important for everyone, including the body. Like, understanding that, like, me, Tyler, as a soul, may have opinions and stuff, but, like, my Tyler's body, may have different opinions. And those are as important, if not more important, than my opinion as Tyler, the soul entity, whatever.
Like, the body has been here the whole time and will be here the whole time. Like, I didn't have to be here for all these things that happened, but the body did. The body had to be here for it all, and will have to be here for all of what the body goes through. Like, I get to go somewhere else. The body does not. So that's why the body gets the vote that it does.
Yeah.
Like, that is the one thing that is very, very specific about the body, is that it stays where the body stays. That's what the body does.
And that's part of the reason why I mentioned the practical things, like, eating food, making sure that, like, schedules are kept up, too, and stuff like that. Is because if you don't do that, the body's going to have a vote, and it's going to say, no, you can't come back.
Like, I have coffee regularly stocked here. I have a plan for getting snacks in between this and the aftercast. We have, like, we've got a plan for body breaks.
Garbage in the aftercast.
Well, I figured it'd be in between, like, just kind of stuff my face and then, have a quieter snack if it's on the cast. But, yeah, like, I've been making plans for the body so that I can do this, because I can't do this if the body can't do this.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I think we're at a good place to sort of end the episode there. Yeah, we've got it on RSS.
We're on RSS.
Both
subscribe.
Fabulously figured it out. Substack, Spotify, definitely. YouTube audio and visual backups of our Twitch streams, at least the actual episodes. We're still figuring out what we're going to do with the aftercast stuff.
So, I figured I would just make a separate episode that's the aftercast. And people can just not listen to it if they don't want to.
Cool. That works. So, yay. Problem solved.
Separate Twitch stream, and I'll just take that recording and make it that thing.
So, we're, doing episodes. We're trying to do them weekly on Sundays at 9 p.m. If we're not on by 9 p.m. on Sunday, we're not doing it for whatever reason. Sometimes we announce stuff, sometimes we don't. We're trying to be better about that, but all of our announcements go on to badoccultadvice.tumblr.com. You can also send us messages there if you want to ask questions of any of the people who have been on the podcast. Go into more detail. What's your favorite color? If you were reincarnated as a dinosaur, which one would you be? You can ask any of those sort of questions. If you don't want to navigate the hell site dumpster fire that is Tumblr, you can send us an email on the other dumpster fire hell site, Gmail. badoccultadvice@gmail.com is available for that. Do you want to plug Peacock Planet?
So peacockplanet.tumblr.com is where I have my psychic webcomic.
Yes.
A lot of the people who are on this podcast write and draw work for that comic, including myself. It is also about a lot of the things that we experience and talk about. And something very interesting is going on right now. We just had a really interesting break in the comic, and that's now, I'd say, diverting into, basically a new interesting part.
Yeah.
So just watch it develop. One of the really interesting things about the comic is that it's allowed to be kind of anything as long as it fits within that image and text format that's on Tumblr. So sometimes there's photos, sometimes there's my actual hands, and sometimes there's some very interesting things happening to pages of the comic.
Yeah.
Sometimes instead of it being a drawing, it is a HR form that someone filled out for a time travel job that they worked.
Yes.
So it's a very interesting comic to do. Everybody's been working very hard on it, and it's amazing to come in and read when a few pages get posted that I didn't do.
Yes. Yeah, it's a wonderful piece of recording of psychic and physical phenomena. With an actual story and plot and some crazy stuff that got planned or half-baked plans that could change at any moment.
Well, a big part of my experiment was based on the book Owaspe, which was written in 1888 or so, 1882, actually. And it was completely channeled. Huge book, but was completely channeled end-to-end, typewriter every morning. By this one guy. And I was like, well, if he could do that, then if I just write this out, will the plot just work? Even if there's time travel in it, do I have to plan it out ahead of time? Even if I've got 8 authors all juggling this between each other and 10 different artists who don't coordinate with each other, who just hand it off. Do they need to plan it? No. It works. It just works. It's so freaking amazing.
Yeah, we're gonna have an episode or several episodes just based on psychic works. And I think just once the Peacock Planet stuff is a bit further along, it's definitely going to be one of those things where we're just going to gush about it for an episode.
Yeah, so, I really want there to be a couple more chapters worth of stuff to talk about.
So, well, thank you for listening to another episode of Bad Occult Podcast, where we do, or at least have talked about, inadvisable things in the name of magical science. As always, I am Tyler Cadmian, a.k.a. Shadow.
I am Felix S. Warren. That's me right here in my body.
Yay! And thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.